Before we dive in, Jessica, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Mays. I am a composer. I grew up as a classically trained pianist, and I also noodle on guitar. So I'm really honored and excited to have to be featured by Ex-Aequo to collaborate with Nanae. And yeah, I'm excited to dive into this conversation.
So I'm really excited to talk more about your great piece that you wrote for the project. I think it would be good for the listeners, to hear, in your opinion, what are some other ways which musicians, music educators, presenters, and, just the whole community can encourage more representation from Black composers in the classical music field?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, this is a big topic, and it's very relevant today. And I think truly having an understanding of why it's important to have diversity and representation in the field of music or anything really is key as well. So really being fluent in that why. So it's so important for children to have mentors to look up to as examples of what's possible and what's out there. And there's something so crucial in a child's development, especially as a person of color or from a marginalized community. It's so fundamentally inspiring seeing someone who looks like you or that you feel some sort of connection with. You see yourself in your mentor. Seeing them doing the exact thing that you aspire to do and doing it really successfully, it helps further validate your own dreams as a perceptible reality. So yeah, it's essential for the growth and preservation of any field. So we're talking music, science, anywhere,
Right.
anything, whatever, to celebrate and honor diversity, but in an authentic way. Okay. So
Right.
for concert music organizations, educational institutes, looking specifically at concert music, because that's my background, that's where I come from. I would say be deeply mindful and artful as you build your concert experience by bringing in new artists, composers, guest musicians, and treating them as unique and exceptional creative voices and potential thought partners, seeing them as equals in engineering your experience, your concert experience, your curriculum design, if we're talking about music education. There are so many talented Black composers of color, so many out there who have something unique to offer. So invite that option, do your research, and truly be inspired not only by the program that you are building, but by those brilliant minds that you're actively engaging and having that conversation with, and be inspired by our collective potential to stretch our own boundaries and the art form in its entirety. So I know I'm going on and on, but the whole point is normalize diversity. So diversity in race, ethnicity, culture, musical approach on all levels. Make gender and race a moot point, because inclusivity is just ingrained in your institutional psyche.
Right. That's beautiful. Yeah, well said. Thank you. Okay, so now let's dive in. So the piece you wrote for the commission is called For Nanae. And maybe you could just tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind the piece.
Yeah, so there's kind of a long journey with this piece and how it came to be. So I'll also kind of weave in and out from my program note as well. But Fornai is a collaborative exploration of a piece that I was starting out for this project that was originally going to be titled Lulu in the Stars. So that Lulu is my niece. Her name is Lulit, which Lulu is short for her Abisha name. She's half Ethiopian. And at the time the piece was written, or I was starting to write the piece, Lulu was 7 years old at that time, and she has a unique and exceptionally sensitive awareness of the world around her. She's nonverbal and on the spectrum, and she navigates the world using her just super, it's like a superpower. Like she's just so sensitive to the world, and she creates patterns, she loops, she taps, she sings, and it's as though she's experiencing the world on a much deeper level, just because of the way that her brain is wired. And you know, I thought about the difficulties Lulu might experience having the world understand her at her level, alongside the importance of the world recognizing her experience as being valid and just as vibrant as other little girls. And so I have my own very specific way of approaching the guitar. I am not classically trained. I don't know how to read music with it. I'm a composer who's written for every other instrument, and I, you know how to notate for it. I've written for orchestras, but I've never done it for guitar. Like it's just always been this.
And that's a common scenario for a lot of composers, I think.
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
with the guitar.
I think so. Yeah,
it's such a personalized instrument because it's on one hand ubiquitous, you know, like it's very easy to have this a part of your teenhood. You know, you have a guitar around, dad maybe have, I don't know. And yeah, you start off noodling, or at least a lot of us do. I don't know about you. You probably start off with classical.
I started noodling. I
and it's just
grade
easy
noodler.
to do that. It's portable, and it's lightweight. It just fits in your lap, and it's you I don't know. There's just you can really personalize your experience with the guitar in a way that would be harder with the violin, you know, which is also a portable instrument. It's just different. And yeah, I've had, again, I have a technically unrefined approach towards the guitar, and it's very percussive, and it's, again, it comes from that background of me just exploring sound. And, you know, I tap and I make loops and I do all these things and that's kind of the crossover. Where I have my own universe in how I approach the guitar, which I've never had to communicate with somebody else. It was always just my world. And so having a project where I'm having to collaborate with a classical guitarist who, again, has a very extensive background in reading music and having a very specific technique. For one thing, the classical guitar is held very differently.
Upright, yeah.
There you go. And how do I approach communicating my ideas when it's so personalized for me? And ultimately, I ended up changing the name of the piece because the piece direction had to change, because I had to kind of transform the universe of the sound world that I created to accommodate somebody who's very highly skilled. And I think also the fact that this was written during the pandemic, and so I was, you know, on one side of the country and she's on another, and we had a couple sessions via Zoom where we can actually talk to each other. There's a bit of accommodating that has to happen, and I think that's a natural part of the collaborative process too. So in the end, I wrote a piece for Nanae, and
but it's interesting because it's interesting you said that the way that, you know, Lulu kind of operates in this world is there's tapping and looping, and you also say that about your approach to guitar playing. And you can still hear that in the piece. So I guess, like, when the original inspiration, like, was that something that you had already started to write before it transformed into this other thing? Or maybe not so in such a formal sense, but it was maybe something that you had experimented with before?
Yeah, there's a repetitive harmonic bit at the top, and I'll play an example of this in a second.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, that was something that had been living with me for a little while, and now I was really excited to use this collaboration as an opportunity to fully flesh out a piece. Now, the original ideas, like the original draft that I was writing before refining it with Nanae, was far more repetitive, and like it was a slightly different feel to it.
Yeah.
I love the way the piece has come to be now. Like there's a lot of different worlds. There's kind of a languid, kind of beautiful loveliness. And mine, I think my original approach, just because of how unrefined my technique is, like it felt very gritty. And like I embrace, the buzzing of the strings and a lot of things that I think professional guitarist would say you avoid those sounds, but I'm like, I don't have that awareness at all.
Right.
For me, like everything is gold. Like I like it when it gets ugly. I like to like, it's not ugly to me. Like it's just another potential sound that can be utilized.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you find that balance. And yeah, again, like I'm really excited with this version of the piece and what it's come to be. Let me actually play an example of how the piece started out, just so there's an example of what my approach has been. So this is within the first couple weeks of me actually writing out the piece and sending Nanae some of my licks, just so she knows what I was going after. And as you can see, like I have a completely unusual way that's probably, I don't know. I'm just gonna go ahead and play the video.
Yeah.
Talk myself down. All right, so
Love it.
that's what it started out as, and as you can see, like I mean, it's under tempo. Actually, I think maybe that's what the tempo ended up becoming, but I was originally going to have it way faster and way
yeah, I could hear it faster. It's funny to it's interesting to watch you play that, just because a lot of it makes, when I listened to the piece and what was studied the score a bit, like the triplet percussion, it reminds me a lot of like, your solo, like your solo acoustic finger style, like Andy McKee and that kind of player. And then also just the overhand, like, because when you play you have to be really careful, like you're talking about as a classical guitarist with the piece, to play the harmonic on the G string and the B open when you're coming from the neck. This, you have to be very careful, but this way, not as much, and it makes more sense, certain things, like watching you do it that way.
Yeah, I actually sent her a couple different videos because I was like, I don't know what's possible. So there was, holding it like a steel string guitar. And I also had a way of playing the piece where it's on a table. And so you play it kind of like a zither, but it's more like this. So it's laid flat in front of you. And it's stuff that feels like second nature for me, because I've always had a unusual approach, I guess. But again, getting another guitarist who, again, has a formalized technique and kinetic language, towards how they
Yes.
approach the guitar. It's trickier than I thought it would be. But again, I mean, when you're working with a professional like Nanae, it was easier for her to find something that actually works for her and works for both of us. So
Yeah.
it really great.
Yeah. So you write in the in the program notes also a little bit about like the influence of some like African music instruments like the mbira, is it, I think, and certain, how does that, are there certain things you think the listener can, or is it kind of so hidden and they're complicated to draw
I mean,
out?
yeah. So there's the mbira, which is also called a kalimba, I believe, which is, it's kind of like a finger thing. Also, share screen in a couple seconds, so you can see that.
Nice.
The kora, the gyil, but also Leo Brouwer.
Yeah.
There's a movement called, it's the first movement from his etudes, the 20 etudes. I tried teaching myself that.
Okay.
But
yeah, I can see those, with the bass and the repeated dyads for the accompaniment, right? The simple etudes.
With all of those examples, there's a kind of a groovy, repetitive rhythmic quality to it. There's a very specific kind of drive that's going on that was just in my headspace. It was in my brain last summer. And I don't know, as a composer,
let's get out of this pandemic.
Maybe that's what it is. It's just like, I just want like consistent pulse that's just pushing forward right now.
Right.
But let me show some examples, if possible, of the sort of things that I was sharing during the collaboration. So can you see this?
Yeah.
Great. So here's the mbira or a kalimba and what this sounds like. Just such a beautifully rich and rhythmic, like all the patterns, there's a complexity and a familiarity there too. It feels very, you feel at home in that groove, right? Also, here is an example of, I think this is the kora. I was in need of a pulse last summer,
Yeah, I do.
I don't know, it's just that pulse. It's like a heartbeat. Here's she's kind of vamping a little bit. I love that buzzing sound too.
Yeah. There's a piece that Dusan Bogdanovic, a well-known guitar composer, wrote, like 3 African sketches where you put the paper clip in the strings actually, and you get this very kind of percussive sound like that.
I love it when instruments have extra texture in a way that's unexpected.
Yeah.
Here's the Brouwer, as all guitarists, I'm sure, have had to play this at some point. Yeah, is it that common?
Rite of passage. Yes, that's correct. I have students doing them now.
That's love it. Anyway, these were like my main inspirations as I started writing.
Great.
and
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah,
too.
you can definitely hear a lot of that in the piece. So fantastic. Generally, what is when you get a commission like this or something else, what's your process usually?
You mean when there's a collaborative
Or
working with
just
a solo
composing in
artist?
general, I guess.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that's a
Yeah.
long-ended. Yeah, it depends.
What do you
It
think
could
about
be
life?
different every time. Yeah, I mean, there are times where I've had, some sort of chord progression or some sort of sonic idea that's been floating in my brain for months and months, and then an opportunity pops
Yeah.
up where it's just like, okay, now I can map this onto that string quartet or onto that set of instruments and make it happen. There are other times where I'm given instrumentation and it's like, okay, I need to build something from scratch. Bottom line, finding like the kindling to my fire.
Yeah.
Like I have to find inspiration. That's especially nowadays when I don't know about everybody else, but inspiration has been tapped out over the past couple of years. It's been pretty scary. Just I don't know if it's just the long hours and working, the constant anxiety, but it really kind of mutes that well that I used to visit, that well of creativity that I used to visit so easily in the past. So I've had to relearn the things that make me tick, that make me go. And so listening to music, and if that feels like too much, doing things that have nothing to do with music.
Yeah.
Like drawing, writing, reading, just anything that helps me visit wherever in my imaginative universe, just because I feel like it's all connected in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, listening to podcasts of other people that I find inspiring. But yeah, just finding things that make me feel motivated and creative again. And then, yeah, if I'm still feeling tapped out, just doing anything and building from there.
Yeah. Sometimes
Like
you just gotta
you
get
got
it
to
out.
start somewhere. Yeah.
Right.
Luckily with this project, again, this was one of those examples where I had an idea that was for guitar, for a couple months beforehand anyway. And now I had this wonderful opportunity to explore and expand on that idea. So luckily I wasn't totally tapped out going into this project.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got to experience the challenge of just how do I communicate this sound world that's so personalized to me. How do I communicate with somebody who is super fluent? So yeah, it was definitely an adventure for me.
That's great. Yeah, it's a beautiful piece. I mean, so where is a great place for anybody listening to this interview to go? Obviously they can check out the piece for Nanae, but where else can they kind of hear some of your other works and some of your other output?
So I have a website, so feel free to check out some of my music on jessmaysmusic.com. And yeah, I have some of my pieces there. I'm also on SoundCloud as well. And yeah,
great.
I'm around.
Yeah. Everybody go listen. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your piece, and congrats on it. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Great. All right, Jess. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks.